right, everybody, welcome to, I think this is episode 3 now of How to Make a Movie When You Don't Know Shit. And today's guest is my good friend. I'm going to change your name on here because it says Sharma Natoli. My good friend, Larry Rolla. Hey, Larry, how are you?
I'm fine.
So, hold on, I'm just changing your name in your screen. There we go. So just a little intro on Larry. I met you when I came out to make the film, right? Was that the first time that we had met?
I don't think so, but
You
if
think
we
we had
did
met
meet
before
before,
that?
it was I think so, but
Yeah. So Larry just wrote a book called Against All Odds. So he's a writer, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But the reason I wanted Larry to come on the podcast today is because Larry was a very integral part of the film that was once Last I Heard and then became Once Upon a Time in Queens. And what happened was I was telling the story on the very first podcast with my father about how I came to New York under the impression that we were about to make a film that I was just going to act in. And then half of the financing fell out, and we had to come up with the other half of the financing, which my brother-in-law did, come in and pay for the whole film. And then we went forward. But Larry was there in this house that you're in right now when all the chaos was ensuing. So tell me a little bit, Larry, about what your experience was in the early stages of before you came to work on the film, just your experience of what you were hearing and what was going on.
well, your father called me up and says, "Come on over to the house tonight, eat with us. My daughter's coming in from California with her husband," and I came over. And halfway through the meal, there was a phone call, and then a lot of talking. And it turned out that the investor backed out of the deal, and there wasn't too much they could do because all the actors and everybody involved with this movie already flew in.
Right.
So
Already
this
here.
is
Right. Most of the actors lived in LA. Most of the crew, most of the actors lived in LA. So everyone had flown in for the film.
right. So
Yeah.
I'm sitting there, I'm eating, and now I realize that there's a major problem. So everybody flew in, and they had to cancel because the investor backed out. Everything got turned upside down. So I was asked to if I could pick up Paul Sorvino, Michael Rapaport, and find a place for Andrea and Kevin to live.
Yep.
And I've been a horse trainer my whole life. This was all new to me.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, they gave me instructions, and the whole thing it turned out to be really funny after the fact because they had limousines that they had to cancel that was supposed to pick up Paul Sorvino, and same thing with Michael Rapaport, and so I became the limousine driver.
Yeah.
So I was told I had to pick up Paul at 5 o'clock in the morning in
Wow.
Manhattan. He was staying at 78th Street with his daughter, the girl who won the Academy Award.
Mira Sorvino. Yep.
He was
Mhm.
living with her, and so I got there at 5 o'clock. I got there at 4:45 because I didn't know where the place was. I didn't want to get lost, and I didn't want to be late. So I'm waiting. 5 o'clock came. 5 after 5 came. 10 after 5 came, and I was starting to get a little annoyed. Finally, at 5:30, he comes walking out, and I said, "Paul, I'm your driver." And I just got on the other side. I didn't open the door for him or nothing. He gets in the car, and he introduces himself, and so did I. When you're around horses for 50 years, I guess I should have held the door for him or something, but I didn't. Now we get 2 or 3 blocks, and the first thing he says, "You got Sirius radio?" I says, "Yeah, I got Sirius radio." He says, "Put on channel, I think it was 78. It's opera." He says, I says, "It's opera." He says, "Yeah, I wanted to be an opera singer." So he goes into this whole thing. He says, "Yeah, my whole life I wanted to be an opera singer. Do you know that Pavarotti heard me once and said I had a voice equal to his and everything?"
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, and then he goes from that into, "You see that place over there? I used to play pool there. I once beat Minnesota Fats there, and you see that statue there?" He says, "I have a sculpture that's in Pennsylvania." And I says, "Hey, Paul, do me a favor." I says, if I'm going to drive you every morning into Queens, you can't talk to me like I'm a fucking jerk off." He says, "Stop the car, stop the car." So I stopped the car. I thought he was going to get out. I stopped the car, and he pulls out his phone, and everything that he said and more, he proved. He did it. And through my
Yeah.
time with him, because after the shooting was over for the day, I'd take him into the city, and I would take him to these pool halls, and he'd run rack after rack after rack. He even took me up to Pennsylvania, where he showed me a couple of these statues that he did out of bronze. It was unbelievable. Anyway, everything he said, and it was a lot, he proved that he did.
Yeah.
And 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 one day, I mean, he has he's a little wacky in some ways, but I tell you, he's a brilliant guy. I brought him home one night about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I had to pick him up at 5 o'clock the next morning, and I gave him a script.
At that point, you might as well sleep over, right? You're dropping
Well,
off at 1:30 in the morning, right?
I have no desire to sleep with a big fat actor. So,
I didn't mean you have
uh,
to share a bed. You could have taken the couch.
well, he was living with his daughter.
All right. Okay. All right. It makes sense.
So I forgot what I was going to say.
You gave him a script. You got the
I gave him
visual
the
of
script.
it.
I gave him the script at 1:30. I had it in the car,
What
and it was
script?
a script that me and your father and Charmin wrote.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
uh, and it was a great script. It was really good. Everybody who read it thought it was great. And
Hmm.
just like all the billions of scripts that are out there, it's never going to get read. It never did get read, but he took it.
Hmm.
He took it. I picked him up 3 hours later, and he he talked about that script. He read it. He
Wow.
read it. He memorized it. He knew everything. He suggested some changes and everything. And I got him to the place at 5:30 for makeup and everything else. And he was the only guy there that he knew his lines. He was unbelievable. He's an unbelievable. He's
Yeah.
a whack job. I mean,
Yeah.
every time we go for lunch in a strange restaurant or whatever, he'd break out in these opera songs and just start singing.
Yeah. I've
And
been there. Yeah.
yeah, and in fact, it was starting to annoy everybody because even in the makeup room and the dressing, and Rapaport didn't want to be around him. Michael Rapaport, he because he'd break out in a song all the time. And then, so what happened after I picked him up? I had to run back because they staggered. I guess you did it, whoever did it, staggered the makeup thing for him for 5:30 and Rappaport for I think 7:30. So
Yeah.
I had to drive into the city, drive him back to Queens,
Wow.
drive back to the city, pick up Rappaport, and then one night they both got done about the same time. And I and Paul says, I want Larry to be my driver. By then, I think they knew they weren't going to get a limousine, and
Yeah.
it was me,
Yeah.
because of the financial situation, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, we
and
were we
and
were a low budget movie. We had major motion picture stars, but we were a low budget movie. But people want to get, I mean, I'm sure he's been on movies where it was a limousine, but I watched the relationship go from you just being somebody that was picking them up and was helping me out tremendously to really friends, really good friends with Paul, and he loved you. I mean, he loved spending time with you. It became more
Yeah,
than a driver relationship.
he insisted. In fact, he told Rapaport, he says, he's my driver from now on. You find your own way home. And I wasn't allowed to drive. I had to stay with Paul all the time.
And we
And
wanted to keep Paul happy because he was, he was the star of the film, and we wanted to make sure that he was happy.
he was happy. And I didn't know anything about the movie or anything, but it was interesting to me. So I'm glad I was able to help. But it was also interesting to me. And the you're right. To me, prior to that, and probably still today, I think actors are kind of weird. Some of them are introverts. If they're
Yeah.
not playing somebody else, they're like strange people. Not all of them, but it just seems to me that people like your father, like
Mm-hmm.
Pesci, like people that are in the music business that have been on stage, that were born to be on stage, like
Mm-hmm.
and there's many of them. Streisand, from the top to the bottom, they're just like natural. No matter what they do, as far as
Mm-hmm.
entertaining, they're just natural. And it impressed me, like the day when Chaz Palminteri came in. He came in and he had a scene to do with Paul. I think he played an attorney.
The lawyer,
And
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and they sat down they had coffee. They were sitting at a table, and they just said each other's lines back and forth, and that was that. They both came prepared, and they went into the scene, and they did it first shot, and it was unbelievable. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable to me how they could see. I can't do that. I'm just like me. My voice don't change octaves whenever I talk to a girl or a guy, or if it's the same. But these guys, they could facial expressions and everything.
Yeah.
And I watched and I watched it. I also watched. The director, you, that was always right next to the director, and sitting there, and the comments that you made and how you worked together, and it was amazing to me, because just like the rest of them, you and I mean, I'm not a professional. I don't have a professional opinion, but in my opinion, the comments and the advice and the suggestions that you made were the right ones, and they worked out perfect, based on maybe changing the script or changing this or changing that. And the parts that you did, it was just, I just sat there, because to me, you're just another girl. All of a sudden, I see this side of you, and it was very interesting. And that whole time, maybe I think it was 2 months, maybe that
Mm-hmm.
whole time I was there, I was glad I did it. I learned a lot. I now have a lot more respect for the actors, because I mean, these guys,
Yeah.
and girls, you get up early in the morning. You got to go to makeup. You got to know your
Yeah.
lines. You got to,
Yeah.
and
It's work. It's work.
it's
It's work.
work.
Yeah.
And
It's hard
and then
work.
I'd
And
sit there.
yeah.
I'd see other people like they were 20 or 30 extras, and these,
Mhm.
I don't know how they do it. I guess they want to be actors. They
Yeah.
sit in
Some
a
of them.
room for
Yeah.
hours and
Hours.
hours just to
Yeah.
have walk across a park bench,
Yeah.
for 5 seconds, and they sit there for days and days and days. And I guess when it's in your blood, it's in your blood. And Rappaport, he was a character. He well, he not was, he is. He's a little wacky. But he lived on Paul lived on 78th Street with his daughter, and on the opposite end of town, go through the Central Park, go down to First Avenue on 78th Street, and that's where Rappaport lived. And he kept his phone with him all the time, and we'd be in the street waiting for a scene or something else. And if somebody odd came along, he would film them. He would film all these wide.
Yeah. He was doing that thing. I remember that where he was like,
Yeah.
he was filming people who were trying to
If
film
you
him. Yeah.
Yeah, if if
That was
if you
funny.
were weird, or you were different, he would film you. He'd stop and talk to you,
Yeah.
and then him again too. After after his work was done, he'd go to whatever basketball game. He was a basketball freak. He'd
Hmm.
go to any basketball game, and that's the little conflict I had because he would want me to drive there, Paul wanted me to go home, and they wind up hating each other because I would only drive Paul. But
Yeah,
they
you
were
became very busy. You had a very your job became very intense because right, like, just like you said right away, and I remember that from the producer end is like, you were driving him, and that was that, and other people wanted you to drive them, and your job for me, you were really became so. I mean, I just am so grateful that I had you because you were sort of my eyes and ears on what was going on when because I didn't come to New York with it was nowhere in my mind that I was going to be a producer. That was nowhere in my mind. I was coming to play Michael Rapaport's wife, and I was just going to act. So when everything shifted and the money changed hands, and I became a producer, and Kevin became a producer, all of a sudden I had a lot more responsibility than I thought, I was going to have, and a lot of the conversations you saw between me and Dave, I mean, were very amicable, but I wanted to make sure that things were being done a certain way and handled a certain way. And, I just talked to Johnny Roast Beef about this yesterday. There was a scene where, I saw it going one way, and there was a lot of disagreement about it, and I had to hold my ground. But I was thrown into a completely new position that I had never been in before. But I was grateful that I had you because I knew that I could trust you. I knew I had someone that I could trust, and I knew you are a man of your word. When you said you would be there, I didn't have to think about it anymore. I didn't have to call, make sure you were going to be there. That's it. You handled a lot, and just getting them back to and from the set it's everything. If they don't show up, or they're not on time, or they're not in a good mood, or whatever, it can ruin the whole day.
well, I'll tell you a couple of things that after I had that thing with Paul, um, the first 5 minutes he was in the car, I I didn't know that he was that capable and qualified and talented. I mean, the guy's an
Yeah.
amazing guy, and I'm sure that after being around him for about 2 or 3 months and seeing how other people reacted toward him, it's almost like he didn't care. He just knew that. In fact, he made a couple he made a couple of statements a few times where he put it where, the reason I don't work with them is because they're intimidated by me and everything else. And he said these things, and I'll tell you, he's an impressive guy. Now maybe he's impressive to me because, I mean, if I spoke to a doctor who did brain surgery and he spoke to me about, I think he was impressive too. So
Hmm.
it's not my game, but I'll tell you the things I've seen him do. He's very impressive. And I know a couple of, I think he was on Law and Order or something many years back, and he quit on his own just because he didn't like something or didn't like whatever. And the only thing that bothered me, and I told him, they the director, Rodriguez,
Hmm.
I had to go pick up Paul Sorvino's son,
Michael Sorvino, who's also in the
Michael,
film, right?
and Michael was all excited because he had a big part, and then they Rodriguez cut his part down to almost nothing.
Mm.
And I said to his father, I says, Paul, why don't you how could you let this happen? And he says, um, well, we can make it up next time. Well, yeah, I says, well, I says, if that could never happen. That could never happen to me. I mean, once
Yeah, how do you deal with that?
how do you, that's your son. Yeah,
Hmm.
but I'll make it up. I'll get him a job. The bottom line was, everybody in that business, from what I've seen, just in this one way, they just look out for themselves, and that that to me, that's why if I was an actor, I'd never make it, because if somebody ever did that to me, that, you're supposed to do what you say you're going to do, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
But
that's
in the films, I mean, I was talking about this with my father on the first episode, and with Johnny Roast Beef too. It's like, there's no guarantees, I mean, there's just no. I mean, I'm sure when Paul did this movie, and he put his heart and soul in it. To his credit, Paul really, he didn't phone it in. He really was prepared, and he did a great. The character he played was great, and he really gave it everything he had.
he told
And
me he thought the script was good enough. He thought this movie was. He really thought that he could be nominated for the Academy Award.
I
He
mean, his
really thought. He
performance,
says
yeah, his performance is incredible.
he thought he thought the story was. I thought the story was great too. Once I didn't know what it was about in the beginning, but
Right.
it was really a great story. It was written by somebody that probably didn't grow up in the streets, because there was a
Right.
couple of things that could have it could have been
Yeah.
written
That
differently and
you
made
could
it
have,
more realistic.
yeah. Yeah.
And
And that's why they
you
have
change.
technical advisors sometimes. That's why they have
Yeah,
technical advisors. Yeah.
well, you acted as part of that too, because I heard some of the suggestions that you made, which helped. But
Yeah.
it was a good movie, and both Paul and Michael thought it was going to be something special, and they were all excited about it. The guy that I really liked the best of all of them was Steve Bauer.
Yeah.
He came in. He was really good. I never liked him in that movie he did with Pacino.
Scarface.
Yeah, he played
Mhm.
like a stupid Spanish kid driving him. I didn't like. But when I saw him here, he's a really good actor. He was
Yeah.
he was
He
really
was
good. He
great.
knew the part, and a really nice guy. I
Yeah.
remember the time I was down the street, and they asked me to be in a bunch of scenes, and I just wouldn't be in the scene. In fact, I ran out the church scene. They asked me come up front, and I ran out of the church. I just But one day, Steve Bauer was yelling, Larry, come down here," and he got a hold of Rapaport and Paul and himself, and they made me take a picture with them, which
Mhm.
to me, I didn't want to take it, but they made me take it. And he was a really nice guy and a really good actor. I don't know how you got him, but there was a couple of people in that Chaz Palminteri and him and
That
Paul
was all
and
Dave. That was all Dave. Dave pretty much had, I mean, he definitely had Paul Sorvino and Michael Rapaport, and he'd worked with Chaz before. So I think he had sort of orchestrated this whole cast, early on, so I don't know. I mean, that was all Dave. I can't take credit for any of that. I didn't bring any of the actors except for myself and my husband, my then boyfriend, now husband. That's the only thing I brought. He brought, and the money. I helped, bring that to fruition in a sense, but no, that was all Dave. He had that. We talked about that. Like, everybody was really perfectly cast, which is why it worked. I think, everybody was playing a part that they just knew, and it all sort of came together. But what I wanted to ask you was, because obviously when you came into it, I don't think you had even read the script, right? You just came in and started working on the film,
I came
not
to your father's house for dinner and to say hello to you,
and you
and
went
then
to work
and then I all of a sudden I had a job, and then when
2 months later.
I get there, I forget who it was that come over and says, "Is this your car?" I had a black Mercedes. He said, "Is
Yeah.
this your car?" Yeah. Uh, will you take 2,500 a week if we could put some cameras on it? And I says, "Do it. You don't have to give me anything. Just do whatever you want to do." Well, they paid me, and they used my car, that black Mercedes.
That was Michael's car, right?
That was my car
That's great.
that they
That's the
used.
car. That's the car Michael gets pulled over in when he gets pulled over.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
movie. Yeah, yeah. It's funny how things. I always equate it to like either summer camp or high school. You get very close to people on these films. You sit around. There's so much downtime, so you sit around and you talk and you get to know people, and it becomes like a little family. It's sort of like you go through as an actor, when the film's over, you kind of go through a depression. You come back to, we left New York because we were going back home to LA, and and there were people there that I got very close with, the Panapintos, and and it was like, it's like leaving family. It was sad. The wrap party was like, I was excited to go home and see, my daughter, because both my sons had come out. But there is a sadness, and then you get home, and I don't know if you experience this, but you get home and it's over, and it's sort of like, it's a letdown. It's like, because it's go, 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 and every day you got something to do, and then it's just sort of like, you go back to your regular life, whatever it was, and it's a weird transition.
That guy that you just mentioned, Ziggy, him and his
Iggy.
wife,
Yeah,
Iggy,
Iggy and
Iggy.
Antonella.
What
Yeah,
a really nice guy.
so
Really nice
nice.
guy.
Great guy. Great
And
guy.
they gave you complete control of their whole
Oh,
house,
oh, they gave us
everything.
everything. We could
Yeah,
not have made that film if it
yeah,
wasn't for the Panapintos. I mean, they gave
yeah,
us their daughter, who played my daughter. They gave us locations. We would have never been able to get those
yeah.
locations. I mean, they were childhood friends of Dave, so they go way back. So they just poured everything into it. And the Lucaris, I mean, we used their house. I mean, that was really like, talk about like how to make a film. Like, the reason this film we were able to make it is because Queens just let us take over. I mean, it would have been the money we would have had to spend for those locations if we were in LA. It would have never happened, but people just let
Yeah.
us in. But back to my question for you. So you hadn't read the script. You came into my dad's house. You got on this movie. So you were watching, because you were there every day. You were watching little pieces of it you get filmed, and then when you saw it on the screen all put together for the first time, not necessarily the first draft, because I think you saw that at my dad's house, but like when you actually saw it in the theater on the screen, what were your feelings? How did you?
I was amazed because I thought when you shoot a movie, you shoot it page to page to page to page. You went from
Chronologically,
the
yeah.
first page to the middle to the last page. Let's do this scene
Hmm.
now because it took place in this at this location.
Yeah.
And you jumped all over the place. And then at the end, I don't know who puts it all together.
The
It's all
editor.
together.
Yeah.
It was quite a learning experience. One day, Michael Rapaport, he was having a problem with Spike Lee, I think, and I almost got myself in trouble because every once in a while, like after the movie is over, now I have nothing to do. I revert back to what I was before, like
Right. That's what
not
I'm
a
saying.
hoodlum, but a hoodlum.
The
A
letdown,
street guy.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now I'm sitting home and I'm just basically what I was before, a has-been horse trainer and a broken down street guy that's old and worn out. And I see something that I think Rappaport sent it to me. He's having a problem with Spike Lee,
Mm.
and I says, Michael, what's the problem? Just give me his address, and the problem will be solved. And then he says to me, what are you, crazy? Well, if you're not going to do something about it, it's like verbal masturbation. What are you doing? You want to solve the problem, you want to
Solve it.
win.
Yeah.
Yes, solve it. Give me his address and tell me what, and how far you want to go. So anyway, that was, in fact, that was
Hilarious.
the last phone call he accepted from me. Um,
You scared him. You scared him.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
and it was that movie. After that movie, after your movie, we went to the premiere, I guess you call it, with the red
Yeah.
carpet and everything
Yeah.
else, and
In New
everybody
York.
was
Yeah.
there. Yeah, and
Yeah.
everybody was there, and we watched it on film, and it was amazing. And it was at that point that 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 your father told me about this years and years ago that he was in many movies with Pesci. He was Pesci stand-in, and Pesci always put him in parts, and he had these parts, and he always did it well. And I just don't understand why he I guess he pursued the music part and the writing and everything
Hmm.
else rather than going out and be
The
because
acting.
he could have been another Pesci
Hmm.
in my opinion. The only difference is he would have been a nice guy, and that's my opinion.
Right.
So so right after all of this happened, we were all sitting around, and so at the premiere, uh, uh, Paul Sorvino and his new bride that he
Mm.
met her, and like a day later he got married,
Wow,
and
that's fast.
nobody even knew about it, not even his son. Nobody knew about it. He just
Oh,
got
wow.
married real quick. So anyway, I'm sitting in front of him, and after the movie was over, I get up to talk to him, and two big guys, like two big football players, they put their arm out to stop me. And so, right, I just flicked their arm away, and then they were going to get and pulled. No, no, it's all right. He hired two bodyguards that night, like he was Tom Hanks or something. But I guess that's what you do. I don't know, but I mean, I was out with him every night for 2 months, 2 or 3 months, and
Yeah.
there was never a problem. But and then right after that, you're right. You go home and you sit and okay, now what? You
Hmm.
want to rob a couple of gas stations? What do you want to do? We got to do something.
I think
We have
everybody
to.
goes there, but yeah, that's a thought, right?
So, and that's when we started writing that book, that
Your book.
my book. And I don't want to
Yeah.
talk about my book, but that's when we started, because you get into that, and then once you get into it, you find out how difficult it is to do
Hmm.
what you did.
Yeah.
And I used to sit there saying, "Oh my God, how did she do this?
Yeah.
How did she do this with the amount of money that they had?" And it was done so professionally with, and granted, Iggy, if that's what you call him, he
Yeah.
got a lot of locations and everything
Yeah.
else, and it was amazing to me, because after that, me and your father were talking about doing a couple of things, and before you know it, you realize that not only do you have to have the money, you got to get the actors, and there's no way to get the
Yeah.
actors. You got
Without
it's
the
just
money. Yeah.
yeah,
It
it
is it
becomes
is difficult. It is difficult, and it's funny. It's like this movie was magical in that sense, and I mean, it's just so sad that Dave's not here, because Dave really he did a great thing, with putting this together from the point that I saw it on the stage reading to the point that we got to New York. Um, yeah, I mean, that crew was all his crew, his cinematographer John Barr, his editor Frank Reynolds, Susan Lieber, who was in the production office. I mean, he had everything all mapped out. I mean, he had thought this through, and he told me, like, he had already made a couple of movies, so he had made a lot of the mistakes. He knew where the pitfalls were going to be, and yeah, and I mean, he was directing great actors. I mean, the scenes between I just feel lucky to even be in the room to watch Sorvino and Rapaport in those scenes together, because that scene in the kitchen. I don't know if you remember that. It was very small. I think Dave and I we were like huddled in a hallway, listening, the listening and watching. And I saw them do that scene live where, Paul has that really distinct turn. Michael and him are talking, and he tells Michael he wants him to do some favors for him, and his eyes just, I'll never forget, like his eyes just went dark. It was like, it was creepy. It was just really powerful, and just watching them do that, and I was like, wow, wow. I felt lucky. I felt really lucky and really blessed. But to do that film in 18 days, I mean, it's crazy with
yeah,
the amount of locations, and I mean, there were stunts, there was a killing, there was all kinds of action. It wasn't like we were just sitting inside a house all day.
there was another great actor. He was really good. I don't know his name, but he was in the one of the guys in the Delicatessen, the guy with the flat, pudgy nose.
Oh,
If I
Paul Ben Victor?
Yeah, he was
Yeah, Paul
really
Ben
good.
Victor's great.
He's
Great character
really good.
actor.
The
All
only
those guys were
the
great.
only one that was miscast, I think, only because, not because of his acting ability, because it was great, was your husband. He was too good
Yeah.
looking for whoever
To
saw a
be an
cop that
FBI.
good looking.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
FBI. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, you,
Yeah.
you pick him out right away. A good,
You
clean
go,
cut guy, and
nah.
but
Yeah.
he was great too. And I, he was
And
good.
Hassan Johnson played the other FBI
Yeah,
agent. He's from
the
The
black guy
Wire.
that was
Hmm.
he was really good. The
Yeah.
Spanish girl was excellent too.
Oh, Andrea
That
Navedo that played
yeah,
Renee's girlfriend. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Renee, I remember when I was asked to pick her up at the train station. I pick her up, and she was very nice. And she gets in the car, and she come off the train. I said, "You Renee?" And she said, "Yeah." And I says, "I'm here to pick you up. Get in the car." And she says, "Oh, you're a New Yorker." So she gets in the car, and she says, "You from New York?" I says, "Yeah, New York, Jersey." She says, "Well, I got to tell you, I didn't want to do this fucking movie." She says, she says, "Rodriguez making me do it." And she says, and he begged me for weeks, and that's why I'm here. But I didn't want.
Aw.
She didn't want to do it. She was I don't know what the
I
reason
think she
was.
was, I think her reasoning was she was intimidated to play. I mean, obviously it's outside her casting, you know what I mean? As far as like she's supposed to be an Italian girl raised in Queens, but she put in a lot of work. She spent a lot of time. She lived with the Panapinto so she could pick up that accent and pick up that, that the mannerisms, using your hands a lot when you talk and all that. And she did great work. The scene, there's a couple of scenes that really stick out to me, but the scene where her and her dad get into the fight, and her and Paul, and he gets her flowers, and they do that back and forth where she goes, who are these from? He goes, from me. And she goes, from me, from you, from me. They go back and forth, but it's just such a typical like father and daughter thing where he's like going to try to accept this news about her that was obviously not what he planned. But yeah, I mean, they were very sweet
She was she was
scenes.
good. In fact, I called her up. She gave me her number, and I called her once or twice, and I said, "Listen, I want you to know that we have a movie, and if we ever get it made, I want you to be in it because you were
No, that's great.
you were very impressive." And then the next thing I know, she married Rodriguez.
Dave, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
married him, and that was that. That was I never tried to call her after that. But she was really good.
She was great.
I
She was great.
yeah.
And she's another like sort of one of those actors that in my book like really deserves to be working all the time. You know what I mean? You never know like what's going to make somebody work, and somebody has a big career and you go, they're not even that good, and then somebody else who's really got the chops, and Renee really has acting chops. Just I mean, and she's worked a lot. She didn't get Shorty. She's been in a million films, but just never really broke in the way that I thought she would. And I think part of it, and part of my, reasoning for doing this podcast, is I just feel that this film needs to be on some sort of a platform where it can be seen, somewhere
Well,
where more people can see it.
I'll tell you this. I was basically a street kid, and I could right now. Well, that movie was made 7 or 8 years ago, but right now today, the most popular thing on television is all these YouTube podcasts from mobsters,
Hmm.
all mob guys, all guys that turn government witnesses, and that they're all making
Hmm.
a lot of money, and they're all and I listen to them because I keep listening for my name, uh, and it came up once or twice,
It's great.
and and but the 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 bottom line is I've either heard or know every mob story, every mob hit, everything there is to say about, and yet the market is flooded with this stuff, and everybody keeps wanting more. But not once, not one time, has anybody made a documentary, a film, or even talked about what your movie is about a mob
Yeah.
boss who goes to jail when his daughter is small, comes out of jail 20 years later. She's a grown woman and she's a lesbian, which is against everything the mob guys are. Nothing like
Yeah.
that was ever done. And it's
Yeah.
portrayed so great between them. I mean, when they were on the park bench, I
Oh,
was I was 20 feet away, and it was just a it was just great. And it's amazing to me that this movie really didn't make it. Now, for whatever reason, I don't know the
right.
reason, but
Right.
it's certainly not because of the actors or
No.
the
Or the
storyline.
story. Right.
You know,
Yeah, no,
so
what I learned, and this is, like I said, I did not go into this to be a producer. I got thrown in. I'm glad I did. I learned a lot, but what one of the major things that I learned is that you have to have money on the back end, not just the front end, because making the movie, you need the money for that. But then that's like the midway point. And I just thought, oh, you make the movie and that's the end point, and then you go
mhm.
on from there. But it's the midpoint. Like, so when we wrapped and we're like, here's the film, we have it, that's when the real money needs to come in, and that's when the real work needs to begin. Because we were a selection at Holly Short, so they showed it at Man's Chinese Theater, and then we were a selection for the Seattle Film Festival, and we went up there, and I mean we saw Dave, me, Chris Kelly, Renee, we watched this movie in packed theaters with people weeping at that moment, where she comes out to him. I mean, weeping. I mean, people, and then we were brought up standing ovations and people just saying, "Oh my God, thank you." And I mean, gay people, reaching out saying this story and how she comes out, and it reminded me of me and my dad. And just, I mean, it was so much that I just thought, well, we're just gonna, we're gonna keep going from this point. And then we didn't have that back end money to really get the publicity that we needed. When you hire a good PR firm, what they do is then which is what needed to happen. Renee needed to go on talk shows, and Renee, we needed to do that whole circuit of, the film festivals and everything else. Just we needed that kind of backing, and we didn't have it. And that's the sad part to me about it, is that uh, it just was so disappointing. And I'll say, like, afterwards, like, the depression that I kind of went into afterwards, I almost had to, like, back up from all of it, because there's nothing worse to me. Like, I'll work my butt off. You saw what I'm not a lazy person, but when my hands are tied and I can't do anything, that's the worst feeling in the world. That's what I felt like. I felt like, here I have this great project, but I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. And that was the part that was disappointing. And I know it was heartbreaking for Dave as well, but I'm sure for Renee and Paul the most, I think, because the performances that they did, it's a shame that more people didn't see it, because it was
I
great work.
I learned a little bit about what you're saying only because I was puzzled too. I mean, how
Yeah,
could it not be, in all the movies? But
right.
when the book that I wrote was picked up by Village Roadshow, they flew me out to California, and and uh, and I seemed like very uninterested. So Steve Moscow, who's the head of Village Roadshow, he says to me, he says, "How could you not be excited and everything?" I says, "Because if nothing works out, I'll raise the money and make the movie myself." So he
Hmm.
says it's not just the money to make the movie. You need just as much for distribution. And
Yeah,
we control 180 countries where we could send a film
yeah,
to. And
yeah,
that's when I knew that if you're going to make $100 million movie, you better have 2 or 300 million, you know, you need for distribution.
yeah.
And I didn't understand when Village Roadshow says, okay, now we have a deal. Now we're going to go look for a production company, and because they just distribution, that's their thing, and then they look for. So I didn't understand all of that. But I guess that was your problem. You didn't have
Yeah.
whatever funds you had, you made the movie with, and then
Yep.
it stays on the shelf because
Yeah.
you don't have
And
the rest of the money. And
and
it's sad
you
because it's a great story. Not
yeah.
only is it a great story and they did it well, but it was never done before. Nothing like that
Right.
was ever
It was
done
very
before.
original. Yeah, very
Yeah.
original story. And I know it would have, even if it would have had a run at the Lemley theaters or the indie movie theaters, that would have been that the buzz would have gotten created. That's the thing. It's like you have to you have to have people seeing it for the buzz to happen. Because once the buzz
Mm.
happens, then that's how these, but I mean, great films don't go anywhere sometimes, and show great shows get canceled, and I
You
get
know,
it, but yeah.
you know what you probably needed? A very, very wealthy gay mobster. The problem with that is if you're gay and you're a mobster, you're dead. So it'd be impossible to find. But
That'd be
but
great.
probably,
We just needed you,
yeah,
Larry. We just needed you, Larry, to
yeah,
just call people. I always said that. I always said, I should just have a mob manager, and then I just go read for the part, and they go, yeah, we don't think she's right for it. And then my mob manager calls up and goes, yeah, she's right
she's
for it.
perfect.
Just, she's
Yeah.
perfect.
The only
Right.
problem is you
Yeah,
had to do it maybe 20, 30 years earlier. 20,
that's
30
right.
years earlier, it would have been a worldwide hit, shown
That's
in
right.
180 countries.
That's
But
it.
today,
That's it.
today, the people that could do that are either dead or in jail. So
It's
it's
so true.
unfortunate that,
Yeah.
and you know what's left? What's left is these scummy fucking guys like that fat slob that's in jail now for taking advantage of all these
Oh,
young
Harvey
girls that want to
Weinstein.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, Harvey
Yeah.
Weinstein.
Yeah.
And it's sad. I never paid much attention to the casting couch, but I guess it's true. I guess it
Oh, for
happens.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
So
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I mean, I've said, I don't know a situation that I've been in that didn't have some sort of that element to it. I mean, I think it's just it's sad, and it ruins it for your art. You know what I mean? When you're going into a career for the art of it, and then you've got to play all these games or whatever. But yeah, no, I'm just really grateful to you, because you were just an integral part of us being able to make this film in a lot of ways. Because I put things in your hand that I was like, I had you hold envelopes of cash, I had you pick up people, handle situations. You were great. You were really like a little mini
I'll never
producer in a
I'll
lot of
never forget
ways.
the day. I didn't want to bring this up, but being you mentioned cash, I'll
Yeah.
I'll bring I'll bring it up. We had we had to go to the bank one day. I had to bring Kevin to the bank,
Yep. Yep.
and
And
it was
Kevin, just let me say, Kevin's the guy that would get robbed. You were the guy that would never get robbed. So I was
it
like,
was
take Larry with you.
it was like a bullshit amount of money. So he
Yeah.
says, "Yeah, we got to make sure you got." I says, "How much you picking up? 10 million? No,
Yeah.
10,000. 10,000. I used to carry 10,000 in each of my pockets. Just go get the money. I'll be right here. Don't worry about it." He was so he
So
was so
nervous.
afraid and
Yeah.
I mean, so I guess I don't know. I thought that was kind of comical. Another thing that it's so sad when you see the talent. I mean, the guy that you married, very, very handsome, very, very talented, and much more talented and good looking than many of the stars that are out there now.
Yeah.
And yet, what does it take to get to what does it take?
I
I
mean,
just don't get it.
I think a lot of it is time. You need a lot of time in order to break as an actor. And I think when a lot of these guys that are famous at the age my husband was at the time started really young. They start really young. And so you need 10, 15 years. It takes a long time. And I think there's a certain amount of luck. and there's a certain amount of tenacity. I think Kevin had the looks and the talent, but I don't think Kevin had the personality for the business, because you do have to be tough, and you do have to like be you kind of got to be like a bulldog. You got to really like get in there and call people, and and show up and just keep, and I think he just got tired. I'll never forget when I called you and told you that he was going to school to be an electrician. You were like, what? What's he doing? Talent is just one piece of it. You know what I mean? It's just one piece of it. I think there's a fair amount of luck that comes into play. I mean, you look at The Sopranos, and it's like, I told my father, how were you and I both never on The Sopranos? You know what I mean? It's like, but it's just like seconds and inches. One person gets picked, another person doesn't. It's like, it's not necessarily who's more talented. I think that's a big part of it, but it's just, you never know.
When I did a favor for James Gandolfini. In fact, it's in the book. I put the chapter in the book because it was a good favor I did for him, pertaining to his father, and he sent for me. So he sent a car for me. I went to it was the Bada Bing Club in New Jersey.
There was an actual Bada Bing Club in New Jersey?
Well, it's called Satin Dolls, but they changed it to the Bada Bing Club.
For The Sopranos. Okay.
Yeah, for the Sopranos. And we spent a couple of days together, and we went downstairs to have a drink at the bar, and they were ready to shoot a scene. So I got up. He says, "Come back here, get in the." I says, "No, I can't." He says, "Well, no, you baby, I'll get you paid. I don't want to get paid. I don't want to be in a scene. I'm not an actor. No, but you look the part. Just sit here and." I says, "Listen, if my friends ever saw me in the Sopranos, they'd slap me." I says, "I can't be." "What do you mean?" "What do I mean? Half the cast is miscast." I says, and some of the lines, these things never, it just never happen. I mean, if a mob boy, if you ever really went to a psychiatrist, you and the psychiatrist would be dead in the morning. So I says, I can't, I don't want to. And then when he walked me out one day, they were all standing there. He says, "Come on, take a picture." I says, "I don't want." That's why there's very few pictures of me out there. I says, I don't want to take. I really don't want to be associated with this stuff, and that's why I never watched it. I happened to be in one scene because they made it was a scene in the Bada Bing Club and they had real topless dances. So, and one was beautiful. So I said, "If you put her over here, I'll sit right here, and then I'll be in the scene." So I'm in one scene.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in one scene where
I'm gonna look for you.
It was the scene where the topless dancer has a Santa Claus hat on. It was around Christmas time. And if you look at the bar, you'll see some real jerk, me, staring at this gorgeous, gorgeous girl. And when I said that and made them switch places, she laughed. And so she was really doing extra stuff. But anyway.
No, it's funny.
Men will be men.
Right. I'm rewatching it. So I've been seeing it. And yeah, it's like there's also a podcast they're doing, Steve Shrippa and Michael Imperoli are doing a podcast called Talking Sopranos. We're talking about a lot of behind, because they spent a lot of time with those girls in the Bada Bing, and they're good sports, and it's not easy to walk around with your clothes off all day long on set. It's a thing. So I give them a lot of credit. But anyway, we're at the end, but thank you so much, Larry, for being on here. And thank you so much for all your help in the film. And where can people get your book? I know you don't want to talk about your book, but people can get it on Amazon.
It's only on, you can only get it on that. They asked me if I wanted to put it in all the stores and go for all that. I says, no, I'm not interested. I said, I just need one book to send to California for the people I'd asked for it. I don't care about anything else. In the meantime, it sold thousands and thousands of copies, and it's something really good might happen. Had it not been for the COVID, it would have been a TV series already.
Yeah.
But that stopped everything, and so now we're just starting to pick things up and see maybe go in a different direction. I don't know. It's not. it's really not up to me. But it
Well,
was
your
because,
story is fascinating. Your story is fascinating, and I mean, it's almost like I'm only into a couple of chapters, but it's almost like so much content in those couple of chapters that could be a whole series right there. I mean, just you've lived such a life and seen so much and done so much that I mean, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be a series.
well, they told me when they said I had to self-publish it, so I own it. And they said keep it under 85,000 words. Put in the good, the bad. Put in girls. Put in drugs. Put in the mob. Put in politicians. Put in actors. I
Yeah,
says, look, you want me to span 10 years? 85,000 words is what I
there's no
have every
way.
morning before breakfast. I says so. So I had to cram everything into that book, but anyway, and I put in things that they could very easily be verified because there's many stories in my life that I have printed, but I didn't put in a book that can't be verified, that are really something. But in the meantime, I hope that this movie gets the kind, your movie gets
Thank
the
you.
kind of credit and exposure that it deserves. And like I said, I know everything about the mob and all of that kind of stuff, and never ever have I heard. The only thing I ever heard about that kind of that situation in the mob was there was a mob boss in Brooklyn that got killed because they found out that he was gay, and
Wow.
but other than that, it's never mentioned. And there's a tremendous. Years ago, they used to say probably 1 or 2% of the world's population is gay. Well, it's really more like 10 or 15%,
Sure.
and
Sure.
that's a lot of people. And
Yeah.
if that gay community, and there's a lot of guys in that gay community that have a tremendous amount of money, and that's
Yeah.
probably where I would have went looking for it, looking for the money for distribution,
Hmm.
had I been involved right after the movie ended. I thought you guys were going to take it to Sundance and New York
We
and all
all
these
thought that.
places,
Yeah, we all thought that. But
and
yeah, that's a good thing, and I think that's what a good PR person would do, would be find those avenues for this film, and it deserves to be shown. It deserves to be out there. It deserves to be seen. And coming from someone who knows, which is you, that this is a unique story and told well, that means a lot to me, because I'm all about authenticity, and I just know we're going to work together again, Larry, on something. I'll come work on your series when you sell it.
well, that's no problem. I have you, I have your father, I have your husband, I have
All
Charmin.
right, that's too
Uh,
much family. It's too much family.
anyway, good luck.
Anyway,
I hope
thanks,
something
Larry.
happens, and if there's anything else I can do to help you, I will. You're a terrific person, very
Thank you.
talented, and now I gotta go sit with your father.
All right, I appreciate it. I appreciate
Wish
it,
me
Larry.
luck.
Thank you so much. Good luck. We'll
See
talk
ya.
soon. Okay, honey. Bye.
Bye.